All right. So today, originally, I was looking at the news, and there wasn't really much. If I'm being honest, we're starting like an hour later than I wanted to. Time just got away from me tonight. I could have done it tomorrow, but I was like, fuck it. So instead, we're stealing a bit from Kinda Funny. So, in recent Kinda Funny podcasts, two of them, they went through and they used this tier list and they rated every video game console based purely on aesthetics. Right? Just looking at it, they did one for consoles and they did one for portables. A real fun idea. It was a fun podcast to listen to while I was doing other stuff. What was I doing? I was probably just at work. So that was a fun thing, and I was like, you know what? Fuck it, we can just do that. That just sounds like a fun time, right? We can. Let's. There we go. This seems like an easy enough thing to do. So yeah, I think that's what we're gonna do tonight. We do have two real quick news stories. I have a real quick WIBE. We'll do all of that here in a little bit, I guess. But for right now, let's fucking rank some consoles. So I would like. So of course they did it since we're still in Kinda Funny bit. So in the Kinda Funny bit, their whole thing was they were ranking consoles purely on aesthetics. What does the console look like? Does it look good? Right? Stuff like that. I'm definitely that's definitely going to be a part of it, but I'm also probably going to take some personal, factors into account, especially when we get to some of these later generations, the ones I actually played and grew up with. Are there going to be controversial takes? Who fucking knows? But we've got a lot of them. We've got so many different ones. We're gonna hit everything here. In theory, I would love to hit some stuff that isn't here as well, but we'd have to add stuff, and that sounds like a pain in the ass. Because there are there's not much that isn't on here. I don't know. But we're gonna start. Oh, the color. The one thing I can think of that's not on here, the color game 15. Right? In the very first generation of consoles, Nintendo made the color game 15. That isn't on here for some reason. Also, where's... I know the Game & Watch should be on here. Yeah, okay, there it is. For some reason, I think of Game & Watch as first gen, but no, I guess it is technically second. I don't know, I think of the Game & Watch was like 1980. I think of that very early on. But then again, I think the Famicom... None of the Japanese consoles are on here either, so there's no Famicom, no Super Famicom, stuff like that. So that's probably why the Color Game 15 isn't here, because of that, but yeah. So let's just get right into it. We've got a lot of things to do. Do I have water? Yes, I do have water. Oh, glorious water. And I'm out of water. I'm gonna get some background music. Uh, I'm just doing random Tears of the Kingdom music. Hopefully it's not bad. Hopefully you can hear it. My chair is falling apart. Oh my gosh. So remember how my phone broke a few weeks ago? My chair, the same chair I've been using, it was old when I got it, and I've been able to get another 9 years out of it. It's breaking. The wheels are just falling off of it. So I'm currently missing a wheel or two. And so I can't really, move the chair without causing problems. Oh, I will also be taking controller into account. I didn't say that, but I will be. I can't remember if it's the Pong or the Coleco. I know the Coleco has good wood grain and whatnot, but I want to say the controllers are attached to the system. If I remember the Angry Video Game Nerd correctly, the controllers are attached to the system, and that's fucking awful. Oh, we don't have, Can I... Add a row below. Um... We already used red, didn't we? I'm gonna make S like a blue. Yeah, there we go. That's better. So I'm gonna do F. Yeah, Kaliko's going in F. Awful, awful. Right, the controllers being attached to the system. If this is the console I'm thinking of, is just an awful design choice. Pong is technically better, but I don't actually think it's that much better. Right? Because yes, the controllers do come off and everything, but it's still very simple. Magnavox Odyssey, it's okay. Right? I know this again. I'm going to reference the kind of funny thing a lot here. They bring up how even though this looks black in the photo, it's actually like a darkish brown, and that just doesn't look as good. So I understand that complaint, but I think it's fine looking. Atari 2600 is fantastic. I'm gonna put it in B. I love the wood grain on it. I love the design of the console. This is I guess I should point out when I own these consoles or not. I did not own any of the first generation consoles. I did own an Atari 2600, but it was my parents', right? It was my mother's. She passed it down to me, right? So there's gonna be a few of those on here. But yeah, the Atari 5200 is awful. Is it? It's big. The thing is very big, and I don't really like that. The controller's ugly. I know you can't see it in there that much. It's just not great. ColecoVision. It's better. Am I ranking these like this in this order? Probably. There we go. I would say it's better. Like, it's still not great. It's got it's got a place for you to input like cartridges and like floppy disks, but it's not great. The Channel F also really bad. Like, the controllers are awful. They're like sticks that you hold. And it's another box. We're eventually going to get to the box tier consoles a little down the line. But this one's also not great. I don't know. It's got more interesting shape language than some of these other ones, but still not great. Why can I not? I don't know why it's not doing that. Vectrex is awful. It's got the screen built in, but at least that makes it a little bit more interesting. You know, that's at least a little bit more something. So can I be honest? I don't hate the Vectrex as... Like, yeah, is it ugly? Yes. But uniqueness counts for something? In television, I actually don't think it's right, or it's better than all these other ones. D tier is going to end up mostly being filled up with VCRs. We'll get to it. But I don't think in television is as bad as some of these other gray blobs. The Game & Watch, I didn't really have a Game & Watch as a kid. My parents technically had them, but I think they were just like in a closet the entire, like they ran out of batteries and they just never replaced them or whatever. So I don't remember having a Game & Watch. I'm pretty sure my parents did have one though. But I don't hate Game & Watch. You know, I think it does its job. Sure, is it just an LCD display that's just like 3 like static images? Yeah, was it kind of ahead of its time? Actually, yes. It's not great. I have we'll get to the modern one later on, the 2020 versions. Those are actually better. But I don't think this thing is horrible. It's not great, but it's not horrible. The Atari 7800 is better. It's not as good as the 2600. I'm going to put it low C. It's better than the 52. Actually, I'm going to put it in D. It's better than the 5200, but it's not as good. The original is just so good. For Commodore 64, this one's in, because usually this is just the keyboard and the controller. Usually there's also like a monitor with a Commodore 64 as well. Like, it's usually more than that, but the Commodore 64 is fine. Okay, now we're getting to some of the big boys, some real ones. So, D tier is going to mostly be filled by VHS players. If I'm being honest, that's what D tier is going to become. I know the NES was specifically designed to be a VCR player. Like, it was supposed to look like one, because people were too afraid of Atari and the Magnavox looking like, children's toys and whatnot, even though I don't think they do. The NES was supposed to look like a VCR, but the texture they give it, right, the stripe, the vents, they're not actually vents, I don't remember what they're called. I think it looks great. Is this nostalgia speaking? Totally. But I think the NES looks great. Is it gonna get higher than B tier? Probably not. But I really do like the NES. The Master System is okay. I put it above the Magnavox. I think it's okay. The real thing is it's got that red, which yes, does stand out against the black. But it's got, like, all this instruction on it, and it just kind of looks ugly. Like, it's got too much going on. So, I don't really care for it. I do not like either of the Atari Lynxes. I think they are... If I remember correctly, they're pretty big. They're big, they're bulky, they're ugly as sin. I do not like either Atari Lynx. I like the Channel F more. Probably not. I say the second generation is better, but not by much. They're still they're very ugly systems. TurboGrafx, I never hated the TurboGrafx 16. Like, it's still probably making it down here in D tier. I don't hate the TurboGrafx 16. That's the mini. Normal one... Because it's got... The normal one's doing worse because it's got this big box attached to it. I think this one looks better. Let's do the Game Boy. I really like the Game Boy. Can I be honest? Is this nostalgia speaking? Yes. Did I have one of these as a kid? Yes, but again, both my parents had one, right? My mother and my father had one. Also, I did a lot of the, right, as you can see, a lot of these B tier, right, my mother had this one. My mother had this one. Both my mother and my father had this one. And I played on it. I still have it to this day. It still works perfectly fine. I grew up playing Tetris and Super Mario Land and Metroid 2 and a few other weird random things like Kicks. I had the Return of the Jedi game, whatever episode 6 is of Star Wars, that had a video game on the Game Boy, and there was like a few other things. But I like the Game Boy. I think there's just something about it that works really well. Is it some of the reasons I still like the Game & Watch? Yeah. But no, I do have a very soft spot for the Game Boy. The Game Boy Pocket, I never had, but I think it's literally just a better Game Boy. It's smaller, it's sleeker, looks better, doesn't have that green screen, which the green screen just sucks, let's be honest here. But I think it looks better. It's just a better Game Boy. So that's our first A tier. The SNES. I did not have one of these as a kid. Let me be honest. This is gonna get me crucified. I don't really like the SNES. It's this gray, slab of concrete with a little bit of purple. Does the purple accent well? Sure. But I don't actually think it's that great. I'll put it above these two, but I don't actually think it's that, it's not that amazing. The Gen 2 I don't like as well. I like the Japanese version, at least has, the colored buttons, whereas this one leaves heavily into the purple, but nah. The Philips CDI, as we get into the CDI here, hey, guess what? It's a fucking VCR. Welcome to D tier, VCR. Yeah, D tier is going to be filled with VCRs. Let's do the... God, there's so many fucking Genesises. I have very little connection. Again, I was a Nintendo kid. I didn't have a Genesis. I didn't know anyone. Genesis was way before my day. I think the Genesis looks fine. I have the mini, like they made a mini Sega Genesis, kind of like how they made a mini SNES and a mini Nintendo. They did make a mini Genesis, and it looks fine. There's some unnecessary, like I hate that it says 16-bit on it, and the controller's kind of dumb, but I think it's fine. I'll put it at the bottom B tier. And then it just gets worse. Sticking the 32X out of it is just so fucking ugly. It's basically that. Sega CD, also awful. Sega CD looks awful. Genesis 2 and 3, I kind of have similar feelings about both of them. Like, yeah, they kind of both exist. There's something of iconicness to the original Genesis that these two models don't have. But they're not the worst things in the world. Like these Neo Geos right here, which, hey, guess what? Actually, I like the CDI more. Guess what? The Neo Geos, they're both down here. They're just fucking bricks. The Game Gear is big. It's basically everything I like about the Game Boy. This doesn't do. Sure, it has a better screen than the Game Boy, but that made it cost like $100 more. Because the Game Boys were cheap, man. I just don't think it's as good. I'll put it above the Master System. I just don't think it's that great. The Atari Jaguar and the Jaguar CD are ugly. They have ugly controllers. No, I don't think it's worse than the... Let's put it right there. I think these are both ugly-ass systems. I do not like these. The CD attachment, I want to say the Angry Video Game Nerd took a shit in the CD because it looks like a toilet. That sounds... I know he takes a shit all the time, but like that's... A lot of my experience with these consoles are all based around the Angry Video Game Nerd. Because outside of him, he does... Right? Like, that's the only reason I know about this Telstar thing. He talks about it. Right? When I picture the CD and the 32X, I think of his video on them. And just him stacking up all the peripherals into a Sega system. Right? That, Coleco, right? A lot of these systems work like that. So yeah, no, I don't like the Jaguar. Game Boy Color, I'm going to put it at the bottom of B. I think it is worse than the original Game Boy. Actually, I'll probably put it above the Sega Genesis. There's something really nice about the Game Boy and the Game Boy Pocket. And while I know color is a big deal, and there were a lot of different Game Boy colors, I just don't... The Game Boy Color just... Again, part of this is nostalgia. I have a lot of memories of the Game Boy. I had a Game Boy. I didn't have a Game Boy Color. Honestly, I didn't even really think of the Game Boy Color as its own separate system until way later down the line. But I think it's ugly. I just don't think it's as good. It's still got all the same elements of the Game Boy. It's just not as good. I'm going to put it right there. I think it's better than the Game Gear. The N64 has an awful controller, a very basic, kind of ugly design. It's weird. The shapes are weird. They also don't have the N64 DD on here, which was like a peripheral you put under it. It just doesn't look right. It's not awful, but I don't think it's that great. Virtual Boy sucks. Virtual Boy has an ugly ass controller and an awful... Come on, I'm trying to put it at the top of... There we go. Virtual Boy is ugly. The red and black screen is awful. The controller sucks. It technically is a portable system, right? It uses the Game Boy sort of, right, idea. That's why it's called the Virtual Boy. It's awful. It's a funny meme. I loved when they used it in Luigi's Mansion 3 or in Tomodachi Life, but it's awful. Sega Nomad. Uh, sure. It's some of these add-ons are awful. I could actually probably keep moving it up. The Nomad, it's a Genesis. It's a portable Genesis. It's bulky. It's big. Saturn, hey, guess what? VCR. There's another one. These things I hadn't actually heard of until the Kind of Funny thing. They actually aren't bad. They've got some weird, like, texture to them, but I don't actually think they're that bad. No, I like them more than the Game Gear. I don't know if these systems are actually any good, but they actually look fine. They're small, they're compressed, they look okay. The original PlayStation, I actually really like the original PlayStation. Again, I didn't have so I know I haven't mentioned this in a while. I did not have a PlayStation. My parents did not have a PlayStation. My father had an N64, but I don't really remember it because he traded in his N64 for a PS2. And we'll get to that in a minute. But the original PlayStation is not a console I had, but I really grew to appreciate it when they released that mini PlayStation. I know those mini PlayStations bombed, right? Like, nobody bought them. And as a result, I was able to buy one for like $20. And it actually works perfectly fine. It's a perfectly fine little mini system that I got for $20. And it actually makes me appreciate the PlayStation a lot more. Plus, it's also pretty easy to mod, but you didn't hear that from me. The Gen 2, I don't like as much. I'm going to put it behind the SNES Gen 2. It's a lot it's rounder, it's sleeker, it's just not as good. Oh, hey look, the 3DO. It's a VCR. It might be the worst VCR yet. Gen 2's technically a little better, but not much. The Tiger.com is awful. Yeah, let's put it way down here at the bottom. It's got a stylist, which, I mean, like, it's ahead of its time in that way. But it's ahead of its time in the same way you would say, like, the Virtual Boy is ahead of its time. Like, oof. The original Xbox? I actually really like the original Xbox. I think the X logo, actually... I think the X on the Xbox logo looks really nice. I like the green colors. I don't really care for the Duke controller. I don't think that is a Duke, though, in that image. I think the Duke is just too big. I know people like the Duke. I don't like the Wavebird either, so... But no, I think the original Xbox is a fine system. The Game Boy Advance. The original Game Boy Advance. Okay. So, right, I've talked so far about how a lot of these systems are ones my parents owned, right? Like, my parents had an NES, my parents had an Atari, a Game Boy. The Game Boy Advance, this original Game Boy, was the first one that I myself owned, right? Instead of getting, my parents' old systems, this is the first one that, yeah, they bought specifically for me. It was my own system. I had a little backlight for it. That I got, I don't even remember how I got that. I think my cousin gave it to me. And then I had Pokemon Crystal, right? They gave me it because it was 2001, so they gave me it in Pokemon Crystal. This is why I consider Pokemon Crystal one of my first games. Because, right, it was the first one that I owned. And as a result, this original Game Boy, I fucking love this thing. I know it's got some things in common with stuff like the TigerGame.com or the N-Gage, right? It shares that similar shape, but I think it's perfection. I literally think it takes everything that one thing that works about the N-Gage, and it just does, because it's a Nintendo doing it, it looks great. Did it need more buttons? Sure. But I like how the buttons are laid out. I love the colors. I have a purple one just like this. I did lose the back of it, but I do have a purple one of these, and I love it. I love it so much. If this was nostalgia alone, this would be the top of S tier, but I'm going to put it in A tier. Is this nostalgia playing into it? Totally. Totally this is nostalgia. But I fucking love this thing, man. If it had a backlight, I'd be able to put it in S tier. But the only reason I'm putting it down to A is because it doesn't have a backlight. Game Boy Micro was a thing I didn't know existed until, again, like 10, 15 years after it came out. I'm going to put it below... I'm actually going to put it above the Game & Watch. It's very small. I've never actually owned one. But it's a very small little thing. Okay, I know some people hate small systems, and, like, I get it. I'm all aboard things like the DS, the XL, and the Switch OLED, and we'll get to those. But I think there is some charm to small games, and the Game Boy Micro is fine. The GameCube, I did not have a game. Again, I had a PS2. We'll get to it. I did not have a game. I had a friend who had a GameCube, but I did not. And I'll be honest, there's something they had an orange GameCube, so not a purple one like this. It's a compact little thing. It has a handle. I can't bring myself to put it at S tier. I'll put it above the Xbox. Oh, also, I did not have an Xbox. I had a different friend, who had an Xbox. And this was like well into the 360 era, by the way, when we were playing Xbox. But no, I did not have... I like the GameCube. I think it's cute. The handle thing, like, this was... Like, out of all the consoles that aren't, like, specifically portables, like the Game Boy and the Game Boy Advance and whatnot, this, until the Switch, is the easiest it is to move around a console. Right? Literally, you just unplug it. It's got a handle. Super easy to move around. And again, you don't really get anything like that until you get to, like, the Switch. Which, I love that portability access of the Switch. I love how easy it is to unplug everything and move everything. It's so convenient. Game Boy SP is amazing. It's got to go up here at number 1. The fact that this thing has a backlight, the clamshell design, it took everything great about this, doubled down on it, made something fantastic. It looked good. I had a black Game Boy SP, but my brothers had silver ones, and then my brothers broke my black one, or they lost it, or I don't know what the fuck happened to it. There's been conflicting stories over the past 10 years, 15 years probably, so I have no idea what the God, it could even be 20 years. That's fucking crazy. Either way, right, I had one of these. I loved it. It broke. I technically have my brother's silver ones because they don't give a shit about them anymore. I love this thing, man. Playing Pokemon, Ruby, Sapphire, and Emerald on this. Oh, I loved it so much. It really is fantastic. Nokia N-Gage is worse than the game.com. Dreamcast is bad. It's got an ugly controller, but it's at least more refined than the D-tier bricks. So it technically goes better there. PS2, again, also, I had this one as a kid. I used to love playing Simpsons Hit and Run and Shadow of the Colossus on this thing. I had the original, right? I had the original PS2 where, you could change the logo depending on if you stand it up or sit it down. One of the things, again, listening to the Kind of Funny thing, they mentioned the lights, right? How there was a green light and a blue light on this thing. Oh my god, they're so right. I used to love going into my living room and seeing that blue and green light. Oh, they just looked so good. It kind of, like, modern day, you have the PS5 that has, like, an orange light when it's in rest mode. And, like, it's clearly trying to do something like that, but it's just not as good. The Switch technically has a little yellow light when it's turned on, but, like, nobody cares about that. But no, the red, blue, and green lights of the PS2 were so good looking. The second gen, it's just not as good. Like, it's still fine. It's just not as good as the original PS2. And I love the bars on it, man. Everything about the original PS2 was so good. The Xbox 360, I I don't even really remember this one. This is the one I had. And I'll be honest, I really like this one. The Gen 2, you know, after they had fixed the Red Ring one, I think I got my Xbox 360 with a Kinect. And it just looked good. I love the sleek black color. I think it all looks pretty nice. I really don't have an opinion on this one. Because at least I'm pretty sure this is the one I had. This one's okay. This one's okay. Put it right around there. I don't really have an... this looks worse than the other two. So I'm going to put it... yeah, let's go like that. I feel fine about that. This one just doesn't look... Like, this one, I love the shape of it, right? Because these two have very similar shapes, but the black of this one just looks a lot better. Again, this one didn't red ring as much. I think that was fine. The original DS is awful. I don't think I'm going to put it in F tier. I'm going to put it a... Let's put it behind the Game Gear. Man, I'm not going to put it that low. I think the original DS was terrible. I did not have an original DS. I had a friend who had one. But the original DS was awful. It very much, like, we'll get to the Wii U gamepad and how it was a toy. Yeah, the original DS felt much like a toy. It just was not good. The DS Lite, on the other hand, this was the one I did have. And this one is fantastic. Every problem with the original DS, this one fixed. It looks better. It's sleeker. I had a red one. Me and my brothers, all three of us had red ones. And we put stickers on, like my brother had, like, Pokemon Mystery Dungeon stickers on. And that was, like, how we told them apart. And then my father had a black one. I think they're all broken. That's the one thing, like the Game Boy still holds up. The SPs, both of the SPs I have, still held up. The original Game Boy Advance held up. Of the 4 DS Lites we had, none of them have held up. Mostly it was the hinge. The hinge on the DS Lite. Part of it was because we were kids and we were very, like, abusive to our systems. None of the hinges held up, even after, like, only, like, 4 years. And then I want to say the black one, it looks fine. I think the top screen is broken, like, some wire has become, like, disconnected and it, like, jitters. Like, it's not fully disconnected, but it's got problems. That's the one thing I will say about the DS Lite. Usually, Nintendo's one of those companies, when they make a product, it lasts forever. Like, the Game Boy's a Nokia. The DS Lite was not a Nokia. I did have, because again, my original DS Lite did break. So I did eventually replace it with it. Me and one of my other brothers replaced it with a DSi. DSi is okay. It's very similar. It's got a few minor changes. You know, it has a camera. I want to say it's a little bit more sturdier. I had a black DSi. It was fine. It was a fine little system. Yeah, what else do I have to say? The XL was better. I used the XL. I liked the XL better. Actually, do I want these in A tier? I'm actually going to move these down to B tier. Again, not that they're too terribly different. Actually, I'm going to do it like that. I'm going to do it like this. The XL was just so much better. The DSi XL was the first time where I was like, no, bigger screen is better. Because the one thing I will give the DS that actually hold it down a little bit, I didn't like the colors. I don't think there was like a black color. I think it was like a blue and a brown. And I had the brown one, and it was okay, but it was just kind of ugly. But these still function fine, alright? I have both of these. Last I checked, they were still working great. Oh yeah, one of the great things about the Game Boy Advance SP, the first Nintendo system to come with a charger. Didn't need any batteries. Beautiful. The Mini Wii, put it above the Dreamcast. That's a system that exists. The Wii, on the other hand, is fantastic. I might put that... Let me talk it through. So the Wii... Okay, so the Wii, you could either lay it on its side, you could stand it straight up, or you could use the stand. Like, it had this gray stand. I know some people who just lost their stand, never used the stand. I didn't use it for the longest time. And then I eventually was like, oh, you know, I think it was like a spring cleaning. We were throwing out boxes. I found the stand, because we had it, like, laid on its side. At least I think we did. And I put it in the stand, and I was like, oh my god, this is so much better. It used to have a glowing blue light. So, right, when you turn on the Wii, right, you put the disc in, like, it glows blue, and you'd, like, wake up in the morning, and I'd wake up, you'd come down the hall, and you'd see that glowing blue light, and you'd be like, hey, there's a new, you know, Nintendo news program. You have mail. Go watch the latest Nintendo Weekly with Gary and Addison. I think that's what their names were, Gary and Addison. That was my primary source of Nintendo news. Before Game Explains, before Nintendo 3DS, right, before Kinda Funny, the Wii Game Channel with Gary. I want to say Gary, Addison, and I think there was a Dark Gary for some reason. Oh man, I used to love that show. The PS3 is awful. I'm gonna put it I'm gonna put it above the Game Gear. Yeah, it's just this big, fat, stupid piece of shit. It gets better. I don't really remember the Gen 3. I'm gonna put that right next to that. I did not have one of these. I do remember these, though. And I think this one's okay. I'll put this one at the bottom of B tier. But the original and the third... I don't really care for those. But this one I liked. I think when I borrowed a PS... Because I did not have a PS... I had an Xbox 360. I had a Wii. I didn't have a PS3. But I did borrow a PS3 from a friend to play the Infamous games. Because I was really curious, and I'd played Prototype, and those were fantastic. And I think it was this one that I borrowed. The PSP and PSP Go. My cousin had a PSP Go. At least I think he did. He might have had a PSP. He had one of them. I don't know. He didn't let me use it. I'll be honest. Yeah, he didn't let us use it. So I have no idea. I'll be honest. I don't really care for this thing. Like, I guess I'll put it at the top of C. This one will go lower down. This one will go above the Game Gear, I guess. Yeah, sure, let's put it... Actually, no. Right there. Yeah, the Go's just not as good. The original is fine. It's whatever. I don't love it, I don't hate it. Right, C tier. This thing is ugly as sin. The Tiger... I'd literally never heard of this thing before this list. Yeah, it's ugly as sin. Google Stadia's out here. I have a Google Stadia controller. It is a fine controller. It's not terrible, but it's not great either. Perfectly straight down the middle. It came with a 4K Chromecast. That was nice. It was a thing that worked. I use it nowadays as a PC controller, right? Like if I go to play some pinball. The original Xbox One, hey, look at that, a gray brick. I would say it's better than the Philips CDI when it comes to bricks, but it's still an awful brick. I'll be honest, I don't really care about the Xbox One S. I think the One X is probably the best one of these. I like the little overhang. I think that makes it look a little better, but it's not that great. It just ain't. And then I guess, again, and the kind of funny thing, they really love the S. Like, the S ends up very high for them. I don't actually care for the S that much. Like, actually, sure, I'll put it right here. I don't know. That doesn't really do much for me. This one is better. Does it? Is it? Yeah, sure, I'll put it there. I think this is the one I like the most of the three Xbox ones. Again, the one I actually had was this one. Right near the very end of its lifespan, I had one of these. Actually, technically into the Series X's lifespan. But no, this one's ugly as sin. DS's. Okay, DS's. I thought it said Sony 3DS. I was like, wait, what? The original 3DS. Where did I put... I'm putting it above the Game Gear. Put it above the PS Go. It's okay. You know, I don't hate this thing, right? I know they complain about the stick, the buttons. I feel like it all worked fine. I like the glossy cover. This thing had a charging cradle. Something I wish Nintendo did more during the 3DS era. All the 3DS systems, except for I think this one, had the ability to use a charging cradle. And the only systems they ever made an actual cradle for was this one in the XL, which the XL sold out immediately, and then they never restocked it. But this thing came with a charging cradle. That was fantastic. I know the Wii U gamepad also used a charging cradle. We'll get back to that. I really wish more Nintendo... because all of the 3DSs have that compatibility, except for maybe the 2DS. So I want to say after that, the XL came out. My brother had an XL. I think I technically have it nowadays. I don't know. He might still have it. I'm not entirely sure. The XL is better. Honestly, it's better. No, let's put it up. Yeah, no. Okay, so here's the thing about the XL. Okay, wait. Give me a. Okay, let me find something real quick. Let me do you some learning. 3DS XL Zelda Edition. So, the best 3DS of all time was this one. Were some of these, right? They made a 3DS XL with Majora's Mask on it, but my favorite was this one. It had, right, the gold on top and the black on the bottom for Link Between Worlds. And I loved this stupid system. I never owned one of these, right? Gold interior. But if I were to buy, like, a 3DS, this is the one I would want. I think this one is beautiful. They're probably like $1,000 nowadays, because, again, limited edition. When I see that there's a new gold Switch coming out next month, this is what it reminds me of. Also, kind of this one. Right, this is clearly their aesthetic they're going for, because these things were beautiful, man. Gold 3... Most of them were 3... Right, okay, I know this is a new 3DS XL. But this one was beautiful, man. I love this. That's one of my favorite limited edition consoles. And as a result, I kind of hold the 3DS XL in very high regard because of that. What can I say? The 2DS is awful, but it's better than the Virtual Boy. It's better than the Nomad. Can I be honest? I'm putting it right there better. I'm putting it in C tier. Hear me out. The 3DS, the 2DS, I mean, was designed as a children's toy. It was something that you could give little kids. They could play with it. They could beat on it. And it wouldn't break, right? The thing was supposed to be indestructible. And as form meets function, because again, I know Kind of Funny did their list based on looks only. I'm taking form and function and all that into account here. At least a little bit. For form meets function, there is something to be said about the 2DS, man. It did its job. It did exactly what it's in, right? Like some of these F-tier systems, fuck it, let's put it in D tier. some of these F-tier systems, right, whatever they were trying to do, they failed at. A lot of these D-tier systems are just fucking VCRs. This one knew exactly what it was trying to do, and it did its job. Did it do it great? No. But it did its fucking job. The original 3DS, okay, this one I'm going to put next to the DS. This one barely even released in the United States. It did have the changeable backplates, which is a cool feature. And if it had had more function over here in the United States, this would be much higher. But the fact that I don't even know if they ever actually released this thing in America, or it was just a very limited release, no, this one, I don't, right, like what they eventually do with Joy-Cons, and right, customizable Joy-Cons, this was testing the waters for that. The new 3DS XL, the name's a fucking mouthful, but I love this thing. I'm gonna put this thing in S tier. Fuck it. I think this thing is great. I know people don't like the little nub over there. The nub was barely used. It wasn't the purpose of the thing. I feel like, right, it did its job fine. I love the symmetry. You can't really... Do I still have that other image up? Are there any ones of this open? So I can't find an image of this one open. At least facing front. But you see how, like, there's the 3D slider over here? What I like about the new 3DS is that the volume slider's over here, and it's, like, symmetrical. That looks very nice. I know they mess around with the buttons, and, like, the bottom buttons here look very nice. I know they mess around with that, like, the power button's now on the bottom of the console. I never hit it once in my life. The stylus is on the bottom. I'm actually going to grab mine real quick, just to kind of give it a once-over. The cartridge slots on the bottom, right, you can see on this one, the cartridge slots at the top. Cartridge slots on the bottom of this one, never hit it once. It looks good. You can hear the click there. Hopefully you can. Click is fantastic. I like that mine has like a gloss finish. I think it looks fine. I really do like this thing. I can't put it higher than the DS Lite, because the DS Lite's amazing. But I genuinely think this is a good system. The screen is big. It's okay to hold. Ooh, I accidentally turned it on. It's got cameras, you know, whatever. It does do that thing where it's got 4 back buttons, and the back buttons kind of, you know, I know some people don't like it. Mine, the back buttons are breaking. I think it's the right back button doesn't, it takes like several hits to get it to work. Also, I didn't bring this up, but in the original 3DS, wherever that is, the original 3DS, right over here, I think the little like D-pad thing, you know, the little stick, I think the little stick works fine. Yeah, is it as good as like a normal controller stick? No, but it works fine. But for some reason on my original 3DS, the stick is sticky. It's like I spilled like maple syrup on it, even though I never did, and it just does not feel good. Like, and it's something that, like, I don't know how to fix, but it's, like, permanently... It's also falling apart because it's old. But the stick is, like, permanently sticky. And I'm assuming it's just, like, whatever's makes the stick is, like, falling apart. But, like, I try to wash it, I try to clean it. No matter what I do, it's permanently sticky. And I don't know why. I don't know why it's sticky. It's like you rubbed a glue stick on it, and that's just how it always feels. I'm assuming that's just like an age thing, like it's deteriorating, and that just makes it like permanently sticky. But as a result, my original 3DS has become unusable. I just cannot use the original 3DS. Oh, but you know what I do like? The original 3DS had an extendable stylus, where it was like a little silver stylus that extended. Well, it is weird that it's in the back of the system. I do love the little extendable stylus. I do still have mine. Most DSs I lost the stylus for, especially the DSi XL. It had like a big pen stylus. Lost the thing like immediately. But yeah, for some reason my 3DS stick is sticky. And I fucking hate it. And I don't know why. And I can't, no matter what I do to wash it, it won't come clean. And it drives me crazy. Not that I really use it anymore, because again, the new 3DS XL is just so much better. But it's just just the thing I had to say. The 2DS XL, this is a thing I actually don't really... I actually did consider picking one of these up. Because, you know, I've heard it's actually pretty easy to mod a 3DS. And I was like, you know, it'd actually be nice to have one of these. Just like a sleek little thing that I could mod and, you know, not have to worry about it. But, you know, we talked about how certain systems look like toys. Yeah, this thing looks like a toy. I actually like it. No, I still like it more than the DS. It just kind of looks like a toy. I'm gonna move this one up. Yeah, it just, like, if you see it closed, it looks very, like, Fisher-Price. And that's just not great, you know. But I'd actually considered picking one up. They're pains in the... You know, you would think the 3DS, near the end of its lifespan, things would have gotten really cheap. Because, you know, people are all moving on to the Switch. But because collecting games has become such a big thing in recent years, it's actually really hard to find a 3DS that's not, like, super expensive. You know, that's at least what like, any 3DS you buy nowadays will be the same price, if not more, than when it originally released. And that sucked. Like, you should be able to buy a 2DS for, like, $100, if not less. And I'm sure you could go on, like, Craigslist or Facebook Marketplace and find one for cheap. But 3DSs should be less expensive than they actually are. The Wii U is fucking awful. It looks like a toy. I think the actual console itself is... The biggest sin is it's generic. Like, it's just kind of like, if you took what makes the Wii good, its sharp edges, and just kind of rounded it all out, it's just not as good. The gamepad looks like a toy. My gamepad has drift. And if you didn't hear, Nintendo's actually going to stop repairing Wii U's because they ran out of parts. So and because you can't buy, like, a replacement gamepad, my Wii U will forever have stick drift. And there's nothing I can do about it. Because who the fuck is taking apart Wii U's to fix? I'm going to put it below the Google Stadia. No, I'll put it above Google Stadia. But that's not much. That's not much at all. It's bad. The Ouya is awful. Nah, I like him. It's awful. It's dumb. Whatever. This thing is also kind of small, but I don't hate it. I think of the Neo Geos, it's probably the... Okay, these got switched at some point. But of the Neo Geos, I think it's the best one. It's a lot... Right, hearing Kind of Funny talk about it, it's a lot smaller than you think it is. But I think it looks fine. The original PS4, I think, looks pretty good. I'm going to put it at the top of A. I'll write the glossy on one side. I think it all looks good. That was not the PS4 I had. I had this one. This one is okay. Yeah, this one's okay. You know, it did its job. It looks fine. This one is just the other one, but uglier. Like, they added an extra layer and it just doesn't look as good. I seem to be making patterns here, right? Terrible consoles are an F. The boxes are in D. Worse looking versions of better looking consoles are in C. And then B on is when stuff actually gets good. Yeah. PlayStation TV, it is a square. It is a square box. In some ways, it is less inspired than some of these other things. So I'm going to put it like down there. The Vita. I think of the three PSPs, the Vita's the best one. I can actually make the argument that it should go, like, right there. I know there are two different Vitas. There's a normal and an OLED. They each have their pros and their cons. I almost bought a Vita at one point, but kind of like the same thing as getting, like, a 3DS. They're more expensive than you would want them to be because, you know, people who just hoard games kind of ruined collecting games. I think the Vita's fine. I know some people argue to put it higher. I think it's fine. I have literally never heard of either of these things. The Blaze Entertainment Evercade Handheld and the Evercade Versus, I have no fucking idea what these things are. They've got unique color schemes. I like the portable better than the not thing, but I don't think they're that great. Okay, so I know we've been putting all of our boring boxes in here. I think the Series S, the original Series X with the black circle, I don't actually love. Kind of right around here, you know. I think I like a good black and white aesthetic. We'll get to it in a minute. I do not like this one. I feel like just having a black circle does not look great. The Xbox Series X, I like more. I know everyone compares this to like a mini fridge or whatnot. And yes, that is a very apt comparison. But nah, man, I don't hate this thing. It's definitely not getting above like C tier. But I don't hate I put it right below the N64. I don't hate this thing. I don't hate it. I don't love it. I like they've recently been started doing like color variations. Like I know there's the white one, but they also started doing like console wraps. I don't hate that idea, honestly, to make them unique. So that's a little better. But no, it's a box. It does its job. Should it be down here with all the other boxes? Probably, but I actually like it more than some of these other boxes. I think the fact that it's vertical, instead of looking like a VCR, it actually has like at least a unique shape compared to the rest of these boxes that are all the fucking same. That gives it some credit. The Game Boy, or this thing. I'm going to put it right above the original. So there are two of these. There's the Mario one you see here, and then they made a Zelda one. The Zelda one is better. It just looks better. It's got better quality. There's more you can do on it. But my one problem with the original, it doesn't have a start or select button. And I think that's just an oversight. They fixed that with the Zelda one. I have actually played through the entirety of Link's Awakening on this little system. It was fine. It was fine, actually. It's nothing that... Is it more of like a novelty, like a cute little display piece? Yes. But I like it. I think it looks fine. And yeah, I think the Zelda one is better. I might actually put it above the Game Boy Micro. We get to the Switch. The original Switch, I love. I love the original Switch. I like the colors. I like the system design. The dock is nothing special, but again, it works. We talked about portability. This thing is so easy to pick up, take wherever you need it, you know, hang out with friends. Love it. This is going A tier for me. We're in A tier. I'm going to put it like right there. I like it. Again, I had gray Joy-Cons, and then later I had the Splatoon ones. The pink and green. It was fine. It was a fine little system. I like it. If it wasn't for the later one, this would be higher. The Lite, again, we talk about children's toy, but but this is one of those things where children's toy, like the 2DS, it was intentional. I like that it has a better D-pad than the normal Switch. So it's still going to get a decent ranking. But I actually don't like... Admittedly, I've only ever used one for a few minutes. I do not own a Switch Lite. I have no reason to own a Switch Lite. But it's fine. It's a system with a purpose. It sold really well, and what else can you ask for? The OLED is fantastic. I love the black and white color scheme. I'm putting this at the top. I don't give a fuck. Actually, putting it second. No, let's put it at the top. Fuck it. I love the bigger screen. Looks so nice. Admittedly, mine is in the dock like 90% of the time, but whenever I do take it off, I remember how good of a screen it has. I love the black and white color scheme. I think it's a great color scheme. The having a better dock, they round out the edges on the OLED's dock, and it just looks better. It's not too amazingly better. Yeah, it's not too amazingly better, but it is better. I think the Switch OLED looks great. I have no shame in having mine on display. I think it looks good. Let's do the PS5. If I'm being honest, if I'm being completely honest, I love this thing. Fuck, man, I didn't want the Game Boy SP to be number one. I guess it is. I think the black and white color scheme looks amazing. Does it look like a spaceship? Yeah. Do they lean into that in Astrobot's Playroom in the new Astrobot game? Yes. Do they get props for that? Yes. Does it require a stand? Yes. Do I have mine sitting straight up? Yes. Do I think the newer version with the extra slit looks a little better? Yeah, but I like this one. I like the the PlayStation logo on the side. I like that it's right. People have compared it to like Seto Kaiba's collar. I like that. I like that it sticks up. I like that it's rounded in places. Overall, I just think it's a beautiful looking system. Again, I have no shame in displaying mine. I think it looks great. Again, it's one of the only consoles, like, since the Wii that has colors. Like, it lights up orange. When there's an update, it'll light up white for a second. Like, to be like, hey, new notification. And it also might light up blue. I kind of can't remember. I know when you have it turned on, it lights up blue. I think it is a great-looking system. Yeah, no, I know some people really fucking hate the PS5. Not me. Love the PS5. The Playdate's okay. I'd say it's probably right around there. The Crank is, I do not own one of these. I've never actually used one of these, so I'm judging it purely on looks. I think the Crank is whatever. But, it's fine. It's a fine looking system. These last few things... Okay. Gaming PCs are real hit or miss. Some look fantastic, some look terrible. I am not a fan of LED lights. I do not care for LED lights. My current PC has LED lights. Fucking hate them. I know I can turn them off, I just never have. I do not care for glowing PCs. I think there is definitely such a thing as too much, so I'm going to put it basically right stab in the middle. The Nvidia Shield is awful. Sure. Shield TV is technically, I guess, better, but not by much. I have no idea what the OnLive is, but I'm putting it worse than that. I actually do have a Steam Link. Valve gave away these things in Steam controllers at one point for like $5 a pop. And I was just like, I was buying other stuff on Steam, and I was like, fuck it. I think I only ever played a single game on it. Steam Deck's okay. I almost bought a Steam Deck recently. I didn't. I think it's okay. I guess let's put it at the top of C. I like it better than the PSP. Nah, actually, let's put it above the Playdate under the Switch Lite. I think it's okay, right? I've held one before. They're not the perfect thing to hold. The buttons are kind of like the Lynx. The buttons are kind of high up, but what else are you gonna do? The screen looked fine. I know there's an OLED one that also looks decent. That, I guess, the thing's pretty heavy, if I remember correctly. It's okay. Other things not on here. The Analog Pocket goes right around Actually, the Analog Pocket would probably go right around here for me. I think, again, it kind of reminds me of like a Game Boy Color and whatnot. I think it looks fine. That new PlayStation handheld that allows you to stream PlayStation games, probably somewhere's right, probably around like the PSP Go, somewhere's in like this range of, like you see how there's all these handhelds right here, probably go somewhere's in there. It looks okay. There's a bunch of other, there's that Linux thing that I'd probably also put around the Steam Deck. Yeah. So this is our list. Our S tier, I'm not going to go through everything, but our S tiers are Game Boy Advance SP, PlayStation 5, Switch OLED, PS2, the Wii, the original PlayStation, the DS Lite, and the 3DS XL. I bet in the grand scheme of things, this list is very similar to Kinda Funny's. Like, I bet what I put in S is very similar to what they put in S. I know they have higher thoughts on some systems that I'm lower on, the Vita. But no, this is my truth, honestly. Man, I really like how PlayStation consoles look. I really do like some of these PlayStation consoles, man. Right, because the PS4 is right there. I can't bring myself to put any Xbox up here. Right, I'm mostly fine with these ones. You can definitely, hopefully you see I have a bias towards handhelds. Because I'll be honest, up until like the Wii U, I was mostly a handheld gamer. Right, I went from Game Boy to Game Boy Advance to SP to DS Lite to DSi XL to 3DS and then new 3DS, then over to Switch, right? I was mostly a mobile, right? I mostly played handheld games. So as a result, I feel like a lot of those skew very high. And yeah, that's just kind of the way it is. But yeah, anything else on these? That took us like an hour. I expected as much. There are some good things. There are some very bad things, man. Some of these bottom tier systems are ugly. This is the only thing Nintendo has down here. The next lowest Nintendo thing is the fucking Wii U. Wow. Yeah, some of these are good, some of these are bad. It's just it's the way the news goes. Alright, I'm going to go run and grab some water. Yeah, I'm going to go grab some water. And, then we will be back. We'll do a few minutes of Splatoon, probably no longer than like an hour. And then, yeah, we'll call it there. Because we have two very small news stories. So, yeah, give me a minute. there we go. So I think the reason why I think so much... Okay, there we go. I was like, I couldn't hear anything for a second there. I think so highly of mobile gaming, like, you know, handheld gaming, I guess, like DS, Game Boy, stuff like that, is because even though, you know, we had a PS2, we had a Wii, a 360, and, you know, a Wii U eventually, is because growing up, right, my father put limits on all those things. It was like, oh, you want to play the PS2, right? You want to play Hit and Run? Simpsons Hit and Run? You can only play for an hour. 2 hours on weekends. And you can only play 4 times a week. Right? He put limits on those things. And you think like, oh, well, you're a kid, right? He put limits on those things because he didn't want you, like, spending all your time, you know? That's kind of, like, I could see that argument, but eventually I came to realize... he didn't actually care about that stuff. At least, he'll say he did, but no. The real reason he did it is because he just didn't like us using the TV. Everything had to be in the main, the living room. And so he wanted to use the TV in the living room. And so that's why he did it. At least I will personally be convinced. I don't care what he says about, like, no, the actual reason I did it was X or Y or whatever. Right? Because I wanted you kids to do homework, blah, blah, blah. No, I am full... Well, and I get there were 3 of us, but that's... Right, he wanted us to use the... he wanted to use the living room TV. He didn't want us on it all the time. And, oh my god. Eventually, of course, once the younger child... my younger brothers, you know, they started growing up, they had less and less of those restrictions, and, you know, I fought the hard fight to, like, be like, oh, well, you know, we never use the Wii down here, and I have a TV in my bedroom, can't I just take it? Because, you know, we never use it. And he'd be like, well, what if we want to play Wii Sports, right? What if I want to play Mario Kart? And then we'd never play Mario Kart. Or we'd never play Wii Sports, but I wouldn't be allowed to take it to play Mario Galaxy 2 or Skyward Sword, right? I'd have to wait for him. But there were no restrictions on handheld gaming, right? The only real restriction was you can't play it after you're supposed to go to bed. Of course, did I hide it under my pillow like everybody else? Of course I did. So yeah, boom. So there's my 5 minutes of childhood trauma. Yeah, there we go. I could have been a pro videos game player, but nope. Okay, let's get on to our news stories. So we only have 2. Our first one is about the Olympics. So since like 2008, or I guess back in 2008, Sega got the license to make an Olympics video game. And instead of just making an Olympics video game, or instead of just making an Olympics game with Sonic, they had the bright idea to ask Nintendo, like, hey, would you be interested in making an Olympics game with us, with Mario? So, right, it's Mario versus Sonic at the Olympics. Nintendo said yes, and they made an okay game. The original 2008 Mario and Sonic at the Beijing Olympics, it was okay. It was a game that existed, for all intents and purposes. I think I had the DS version. It was not great. But then, 2 years later, for the 2010 Vancouver Winter Olympics, they made another one, this time with winter sports. I had this game on the Wii, and I loved it. I will stand by this is the best game in the series. Mario and Sonic at the 2010 Winter Olympics was so good, so much fun. It was all the Winter Olympic sports you love: curling, bobsledding, skiing, snowboarding. I don't think there were guns yet. I think that came in one of the later ones, like Sochi or whatever. But it was so much fun. I loved that game as a kid. And then from there, they kept making them. That was the last. I think that was the only one. I might have bought the 2012 London Olympics one, which was okay. I might have. I think that was a Wii U game, though. It might have been on both the Wii and Wii U. I kind of can't remember. But Vancouver was amazing. And then they did 2012 at the London Olympics. 2014 was Sochi? South Korea? I think that sounds right in my head. 2016 was Brazil. I think they did one for Brazil. I cannot remember if they did one at the Beijing 2018 Olympics. I can't think of a Beijing Olympics Mario and Sonic game. That might exist, but I have no recollection of it whatsoever. And then I know they did one for the 2020 Paris or 2020 Japanese Olympics, because hey, guess what? Nintendo had Mario introduce the Japanese Olympics, but then COVID happened and just fucked everything up. So we never got the real Nintendo Paris Olympics Japanese Olympics we were all promised. 2020 was supposed to be the fucking year, man. And then it just didn't come together, and it sucks. Well, so of course there was a lot of talk like, hey, it's been a few years. There was a 2022 Olympics somewheres. I don't remember where. Maybe that was Sochi. I have no idea where the 2022 Olympics were. But they did, of course, right now the Olympics are going on in Paris. If you've been on TikTok recently, you've maybe seen the Norwegian Muffin Man, which is kind of like, last week I know I mentioned I don't give a shit about the Olympics, right? I haven't cared about the Olympics in a long time. But, this whole Muffin Man thing on TikTok, I actually think is kind of funny. So there's a Norwegian, so this is not the news story. We'll get to the news story in a second. But there's this Norwegian swimmer who is obsessed with these chocolate muffins. And everybody at the Olympic Village knows about it. They've been making tributes to this guy at the Norwegian Olympics Village. There's been videos of him on TikTok. Other competitors having to find these muffins and try them out. People wondering where can they get these muffins. They can't. It's been a whole thing. It's been a lot of fun. So, okay, I guess I am a little excited about the Olympics. Also, all the stuff with that boxing lady pisses me the fuck off. Like, all these TERFs trying to claim that, no, she's not a real woman, even though she has gone as woman her entire life. Her birth certificate says woman. Her passport says woman. She has always identified as a cis woman. Is she intersex? It seems like it, but she's a woman. But, of course, these fucking TERFs... Man, this is what I loved. This is why I loved Dreadnought, the book Dreadnought, right? Because the main villain was a big TERF. And then at the end of the book, she almost kills herself because she's intersex, and she just didn't know. Right? And it's kind of, right, you have... The Olympics thing pissed me off. Let her wrestle. She's doing a great job. Or, she's a boxer. Let her box. She's doing a great job. She is a biological woman. That's what she's always identified with. Right? Is she intersex? Yeah. But she's a biological woman. All these fucking TERF. J.K. Rowling just needs to fucking die. Okay, maybe I'm being a little too drastic there, but you get my point. Man, I'm so glad I hated Harry Potter as a kid. I'm so glad I'm so glad I sold my soul to Pokemon and not Harry Potter. But, where was I? Okay, so besides all that bullshit, we have some more Olympics bullshit. Because, of course, you know, with the new Winter Olympic, or the new Paris Summer Olympics, there's been a lot of questions like, hey, why is there not a new Mario and Sonic Olympics game? Right? People have been asking that question, and, like, for good reason. You know, because those games are a lot of fun. And, well, it turns out that the Olympics actually, that it was not Sega who, right, didn't want to make them anymore. Even though I've actually been saying for a while, I'm kind of done with the series. That's neither here nor there. Right, it wasn't Sega who stopped the series. It wasn't Nintendo who decided to take their ball and go home. It was the Olympics themselves. Because they instead decided to team up with a gaming company to do Olympic NFTs. You know, those things that were so short-sighted that basically their entire market crashed, they're not worth anything, and that everybody fucking hates? Yeah, the Olympics teamed up with a company to do NFTs and stopped working with Sega. They also teamed up with a company to make esports games, because esports is going to be in the next Olympics. Which Olympics is that? I want to say it's the Los Angeles Olympics, but I could be wrong about that. Whatever the next Olympics is, it's supposed to have esports. But when you think like... So I remember when this story broke a few months ago. And you would think like, oh, esports, is it going to be, you know, Call of Duty? Are they going to like team up with Epic and do like Rocket League and Fortnite and Fall Guys? Right? You would think they would do something like that. No, that's not what the Olympics did for esports. What the Olympics did was they teamed up with some shitty mobile game company and got a bunch of shitty mobile games. And those are the official esports Olympic Games. Of course, some of this stuff is subject to change, of course. But it's like such a short-sighted, terrible, greedy move. Like, already nobody wants to host the Olympics. Like, the only reason Utah is hosting the 2032 Olympics is because nobody else wanted to do it. Right? Nobody cares about the Olympics. No city wants to host them because they just lose money. And so, of course, the Olympics make the short-sighted decision to get some shitty esports games and get some NFTs. Have there actually been Olympic NFTs? I have no idea. I have no idea if they've actually done NFTs recently, but I just know they were a thing at one point, and like, oh, that's a bad idea. With the 2022 Olympics in Seoul, maybe that's where they were. Right, Sochi and then in Seoul. That sounds right. I don't know. Either way, like I said, I don't think the Mario and Sonic Olympic Games, even though I actually heard the 2021 was actually pretty decent, and it's on sale right now if you're at all curious. They definitely got some good characters, man. Like, over the years, they just kept adding characters, and like, that's the right way to do it. They kept adding new sports. Like, I remember in the London one when they added equestrian, and I was like, that's neat. At least I think it was the London one that added equestrian. Imagine playing esports in your Olympics video game. I know they also made like another Olympics video game that was like more like formal and like less cartoony, but I think that's kind of boring, man. There's a charm to having Mario and Sonic do it. And I would have loved to have seen more characters show up, man. Imagine if they had gotten in like Banjo-Kazooie Bowls, or if they had gotten in like Pac-Man or Mega Man. That would have been fun, right? Just keep bringing, like, have different universes represent different countries, right? Stuff like pretend like instead of having different countries, you have different video game universes. That would be really cool, but of course that's not what they did. And then I always liked the Dream events, which were like, hey, like the one Dream event in Vancouver I loved was the snowboarding one, because it took place in a Sonic the Hedgehog level. It was like, it wasn't City Escape, but it was like a bridge, and it was just really cool. It was a really cool idea. There was a sledding one that had you being like done by like bullet bills, and it's like, these are very fun. I always wish they did more of them, because they basically just took Olympics events and put them in like fantasy settings, and that's a very fun idea. But you can't win them all, so. But I still love that Vancouver game on the Wii was so good. So our next story, we have Nintendo Switch sales figures, right? It is that time of year that we get some Nintendo Switch sales figures. So the Switch has sold 143 million units. That is about 12 million below the PS5 and the DS. So they still definitely have a ways to go. And I will be honest, it doesn't look great for the Switch outselling those systems, because the sales numbers are actually down. Like, they should be higher than they currently are, but Nintendo Switch sales dropped like over 40%, which isn't good. I mean, there's a part of this that's a calculated risk. Because, again, there has been a lot of speculation that the Switch 2 was supposed to come out in October, and it got pushed until next year. So I would not be surprised if, at least on some level, that affected things. The fact that there is no more game like Breath of the Wild around the corner. Don't get me wrong, there are some real good Nintendo games coming out soon. But there's nothing on that Mario Odyssey, Breath of the Wild level. Right? There's nothing that big. And that will kind of hamper the console's later life. Honestly, this is to be expected. There was a part of me that was hoping, the Switch was going to outsell the PS5. Mainly, I know we just rated the PS5 very highly, but, there's a part of me that wants to stick it to the PS5. And them not being able to do that, Again, don't take personal investment in companies. Corporations are not your friends. But, it would have been neat. Oh my gosh. Okay, maybe I've gone too much into the water. It's still really good, but oh my gosh, I can just feel it like... Ooh. The other thing we got from these sales figures is that Paper Mario, the Thousand Year Door remake, and Luigi's Mansion 2 HD both sold over 1 million units. Now, Paper Mario, the Thousand Year Door remake, did not sell more units than Paper Mario, the Origami King. Because I want to say the Origami King sold like 2.5 million, whereas this only sold like 1.6. So that does kind of suck, right? Because we really wanted this game to do well, because if it does well, that means that Nintendo's more likely to, make Paper Mario games more like Thousand Year Door and less like Origami King. But, like, sadly, this is a battle we're probably going to lose. That sucks. But I want to say this is like... I saw the Switch has sold, like... I want to say there are now 69 games on Switch that, are either Switch exclusive or, have sold at least 1 million units on the Switch. That's crazy to think about. The fact that there are, like... I want to say 69. It might be less than that. It might be more than that. But 69 sounds right in my head. That have sold at least 1 million units. The Switch just sells, man. I mean, Mario Kart sold over 60 million. Right? It's basically 1 in every 2 Switch owners own Mario Kart. That's kind of crazy. It's technically less than that. It's like every 1.8 Switch users own Mario Kart. But still, that's... every 0.8 Switch users, not 1.8. Right? That's why. That's still a wild statistic that you really only see in, like, pack-in games, like Wii Sports. So that's crazy. Tears of the Kingdom is now, I think, the 8th best-selling Switch game of all time. It's like 20 million units, right under Super Mario Party, which is like 20.8. Like, it's just a few million. It's just like less than 1 million away from outselling Super Mario Party. Other than that, numbers really haven't changed that much. Animal Crossing is still at like 45. Breath of the Wild is still at like 38. Mario Odyssey is still around there somewheres as well. Alright, a lot of those numbers haven't changed. But hey, the Switch is getting there. I don't think it'll make it all the way up to 155, because I'm pretty sure because the Switch 2 is going to come out in March, and I doubt they're going to put the original Switch on sale. I mean, they're probably going to still keep selling the original Switch and putting out games for like another year, but I don't think they're going to sell that many more. Because Nintendo is usually, outside of, like, the Game Boy, Nintendo is usually real quick to abandon a console. Right. Like, really, the only time they don't is when the new thing fails. I mean, again, they were making Just Dance games on the Wii until, like, 2020. Which is crazy to think about. So, like, if the new Switch successor like, underperforms, we'll keep seeing some stuff for Switch. It's kind of like what we're seeing for the PS5 right now, where it's like we're still getting PS4 games, even though it's been, like, it's coming up on 4 years. Or 3-4 years. It's been a while since the system launched. And we're still getting new games for it. Yeah, let's say 4. We're coming up on 4 years in November. Because, like, Madden still releases on PS4. I think it does anyways. That sounds right in my head. So, yeah. Alright, that takes us to WIBE. Like I said, everything else I had was short today. So let's talk about my mother playing Tears of the Kingdom. Let's start with that one. I was really hoping she was going to beat the game. I went and saw her earlier today. She did the Spirit... I think last week she had gotten to the Spirit Temple. You know, let's just recount it all. So last week, from what I remember, she was trying to get to the Spirit Temple. But she had no idea where to go. I had no idea where to go. My guess was the Ring Ruins. Well, eventually she did find the ring. She went up to the island, the Great Island in the sky, the Temple of Time. And from the Temple of Time, she saw the Ring Ruins. Went down there, talked to... the two guys, Turo and, I can't remember, Paya? She talked to them, went up, did the Ring Ruin puzzle, went over to the Dragon River, got the electric dragon gear, cleared out the Thunderdome, made her way through the Thunderdome, got to the Spirit Temple. She actually did the Spirit Temple fairly easily. Like, it went pretty quick from my understanding. And then after that, she fought the boss. Boss wasn't too much of a trouble for her. And then afterwards, I was like, okay, well, you're now ready to beat the game. So I told her to go get food, right? I told her, you need to go get food, and you need to get a bunch of Sundelions. She went and got, like, 18 Sundelions, and she got, like, a bunch of meat, a bunch of flowers, a bunch of fish. She collected a bunch of food. And so after she did all that, I was like, okay, let's go under... Right, I came earlier today. I went over after work today to visit her and be like, hey, let's beat the game today. Let me help you beat the game. So she made a bunch of food. I had her make Sundelion dishes. Not that, again, she had like 18 Sundelions, so it's not that many. But I was like, hopefully it'll be enough. And then so she goes down underneath the castle. She gets her ass kicked. She gets her ass kicked a bunch of times. Just on the way to get to the final layer, the Gloom layer, right? She struggles a lot there. Then she gets to the Gloom layer, and for like, probably like 2 hours, she just struggles with those enemies. She just can't, right? Especially the Gibdos. The Gibdos, right? She needs the electric enemies, and she's just, right? She's slow, and she has 20 hearts, so it's not an insane amount. You know, she's got just enough, but she's struggling to do that. The big thing is she's struggling not to use up all of her food. She's got a bunch of gloom-resistant food, but clearly not enough. And she's like, oh, maybe I should go back to the surface and get more food. And I'm like, you could, but you have no way of getting back down here. She never did the travel medallion quest, and there's no light route underground. Like, I really wish the game gave you a light route right before the final boss. So that way, you know, you could heal all your gloom and whatnot before fighting him. But no, none of that. So yeah, she's going into the final boss on a deficit. Like, she's already down like 10 hearts. And that's just making things harder. She can get through the first 2 or 3 waves pretty easily, but when the Gibdos trip her up, and then the Moblins, right, usually kill her. So she hasn't actually beaten it yet. I'll probably go back sometime in the next week and help her out. And then I have no idea how bad Ganon's gonna be. I could see her really struggling. if she can get... Because I'm pretty sure you can save after you beat the horde of enemies, and that way you can prepare before Ganon. But, you know, Ganon's going to definitely be a struggle, because I remember Ganon in Tears of the Kingdom, or Ganondorf in Tears of the Kingdom, being harder than Calamity Ganon in the first game. I could be wrong about that, admittedly. Like, Calamity Ganon might be harder. She does have the Master Sword. She has everything she needs. It's just not going to be easy. So, yeah, that's kind of where she's at right now. But the hope was that she would beat the game by the end of July. Didn't make it, but she got really close. I mean, she had done everything but the final boss, right? She did the Spirit Temple. She went over to the Great Deku Tree while looking for materials, because she saw the shrine inside the Lost Woods, and was like, I want to get into that shrine. So she tried entering from above. She tried going left, right, up and down, right? Nothing. And I was like, well, you know, you've tried every direction. I guess the only way left is underground. So she went underground, she got into the Great Deku Tree, did that. That's like the last thing she did before going to the final boss. So yeah. She went and fought Phantom Ganon, who kicked her ass. She struggles with Gloom Hands. That's like Gloom Hands already kind of suck, but those enemies just trip her up so much. Because, you know, they're just constantly on you. And Gloom, you know, that is one of my problems with Tears of the Kingdom. You do not need Sundelion, things until the very end of the game. Because anytime you're underground in the game, there's always a light route not far from you. You can always use light route. But because at the end of the game, there are no light routes, you have to use Sundelions. I mean, I guess you could also just not get hit at all, but that sounds like a much bigger pain in the ass. So, yeah, no, that's one of I hate how much the end of Tears of the Kingdom relies on Sundelions. And I wish the return on Sundelions was better. Like, the return on Sundelions is not great. Like, I think it's like 4 Sundelions for like... Basically, 1 Sundelion gets you 3 Hearts of Recovery. Unless you do 4, and then it gets 14. And that's... Like, I'm sure you could probably go higher than that. But at some point, it's just a bad return of investment. So, I don't know. But, you know, hopefully she'll beat the game sometime in the next few days. And then after that, she says she wants to go back to Hades. Because she was playing way earlier in the year, she started playing Hades. And was struggling in that game. Probably, I would say more than this one, but I honestly have no idea. I mean, she at least beat Breath of the Wild. Hopefully some of those Breath of the Wild skills will transfer over to Hades. Hopefully. Yeah, so that's that. Other things I've been doing. So I know, at least I'm 90% sure that previously we've talked about the Inheritance games. Right? The Inheritance games is a series of books. They're okay. You know, they're like, this girl inherits a bunch of money, but she has to live in this house for a year. And while living in this house, she has to, there's, puzzles to solve, all involving the Hawthorne family, right? The 4 grandsons of Elias Hawthorne, the guy who gave her all her money. And it's all, you know, fun and games and whatnot. The puzzles aren't actually that complicated in the first few books. They're all pretty straightforward. The books are all, you know, they're a fun time. It's a long, you know, for one of those book talk recommendations, they have no spice in them. Which is nice, right? Most anything you'll see on Book Talk has spice. This one doesn't, so that's nice. But there had been 4 books previously. I'm pretty sure we had talked about all 4. I'm pretty sure, at least we've talked about the first 3. Well, earlier this week, Book 5 came out, The Grandest Game. And I started reading it, or I started listening to it, I should say. Because again, there is no difference between reading a book and audiobooking. I don't care what people say, no, the difference is negligible. So I started that, and I'll be honest, I've just been super busy this week. So, a lot of it, this definitely feels the most puzzle of the books, Like, there's definitely a lot more puzzles and riddles. Oh god, we gotta talk about the Book of Bill here in a minute. But there's a lot more puzzles and riddles going on in this one. And I'll be honest, I've just been kind of so busy that, like, my brain hasn't had a chance to, like, solve the puzzles. Like, you know, because a good puzzle in a book is one where the reader figures it out at the same time the characters do. Like, that's what makes, like, shows like Sherlock bad, is that Sherlock just pulls a piece of information out of his ass, and that's how he solves the puzzle. Right? Whereas a good puzzle will give you all the hints you need to solve it, and then, right, have the character explain how they got to that conclusion. I think these books are good puzzle. The first three were, anyways. This one's definitely a lot more puzzly. It's got a lot more riddles going on. But I've just been so busy this past week that I really just haven't had time to focus on the puzzles. So, like, and because you have 3 of them rattling around in your brain at once, I am a lot less focused. Because, you know, I'm trying to keep up with all 3 puzzles at the same time. Because the book's basically an escape room. Like, they even say as much at one point. Like, yeah, you're basically locked in an escape room, and you have 12 hours to get out. But yeah, no, it's been breaking my brain a little bit. But once I have more time to actually focus on reading it, I'm sure things will go a lot better. But, okay, while I was listening to the book, I was like, okay, I need something to do. I don't want a Splatoon. Let's just, let me just boot up something random. And I thought about that Iwata book I read a while ago. And in that, they mentioned how Iwata's, like, golf program for the Famicom was, like, integral. And, right, elements from his original golf game are still being used to this day. And I was like, you know what? I don't think I've ever played NES Golf. I just saw it on screen, right, while I was flipping through stuff, and I was like, you know what? Fuck it. Why not? Let's boot up NES Golf. I struggled so much in that game. I played 18 holes, and I got my ass kicked so hard. I was like 100 over par. I did awful. Because at first I thought I was just missing something about the controls. Like, there's a whole thing where... Because I figured, like, modern golf games, you press the button to start your swing, you press it at the top of the bar to do power, and then you press it when it hits, like, the white area to do accuracy. And that is technically how it... Even though the game never explains it, except for probably in the instruction manual. Right, that is technically how it works, but it does not feel like it sometimes. Sometimes the ball would just hook to the left for no reason. There's no good indication about where your ball's gonna go, other than direct. Like, there's no good indication of distance. That sucks. Putting is awful. Because it just, like, you, like, quickly tap A in succession, and your ball will still go a mile away. For some reason, the accuracy part... So, like, when you hit the power button, it goes at a decent speed. But when you hit the button again to lock in power, it goes super quick. Like, when it goes back, the arrow that indicates, like, speed doubles in speed, right, to do accuracy. It's awful. So I was really struggling to hit the ball accuracy. I kept curving it to the left, and it was awful. For hearing, like, such high praise, and like, I see how elements of that golf game are still used to this day, but it's very clear that, like, modern golf games, like Golf Story, have just kind of refined things, and just makes it all work so much better. Because, oh my god, did I struggle, man. I struggled so fucking much in NES Golf. I never want to play that again. I'm sticking to Mario Golf and Golf Story. Never playing NES Golf again. Terrible experience. 1 out of 10 would not do again. I'm sure back in the NES days, that game was amazing, but like most things on the NES, while it was amazing at the time, in modern context, it just does not hold up. It really doesn't. I tried, man. And yeah, I think that's it. I think that's all I played. We do have the Book of Bill. So there's been this whole... So I read the Book of Bill. If you're a Gravity Falls fan, right, whether you watched the show back in the day or at any point in the past, like, 12 years, because yes, that show is 12 years old, I highly recommend this. I recommend reading Journal 3 first. If you've never read Journal 3, it's also a pretty good time. If you've never seen Gravity Falls, oh my gosh, it's so good. One of Disney's best. But the Book of Bill is great. It's got a lot of weird things. A lot of it feels like a shitpost. If I'm being honest, like, when you get to the conclusion... I'm not going to spoil it, but when you get to the conclusion of the book, I was like, that makes so much sense. Because a lot of the book just kind of reads like a shitpost. The book is filled with riddles. It's filled with puzzles. Of course, in the book, they reference a this is not a website.com. And it turns out there's a website. There's a bit in the book where it just makes you read The Great Gatsby, which is very funny. And then it turns out, right, you get into this website, and the website's currently broken, but they give you a free copy of The Great Gatsby because the website's broken. They're clearly building up towards something. What is that something? I have no idea. But they're clearly building towards something. There's so many little mysteries and whatnot in this book. So many ciphers. Some, like, people found... So at one point in the book, they give you, like, a hex cipher, or a substitution cipher, where you, like, they give you one wheel. You have to make another wheel, and then make A equals X. And, like, just the other day, they figured out that if you use that substitution cipher on the coffee stains in the book, that also is a code. There's codes in there that you can find solutions to. And I think that's very interesting. And, you know, there's still more riddles that people are finding out. There's a lot of fun stuff in it. There's, Yuri. Yeah, Yuri. Because there are some things they imply about Ford and Bill that, like, when I originally saw Terminally Silly over on TikTok talk about it, I was like, what? No way. And then you actually read it, and you're like, holy shit, they actually do Okay, this is the one spoiler. They basically imply that Bill and Ford's relationship is at least in some way romantic. Like, it may not, you know, it may not be, like, full-on, like, sexual, but there's definitely something there between them. And when Ford breaks up with Bill, effectively, basically, he kind of gets raped. Like, if we want to go in on the aspect of this being a metaphor for a romantic relationship, Bill basically rapes him by taking control of his body and forcing him to do things he doesn't want to do. Like, that's what they're saying. Let's be honest here. But after that, right, Ford breaks up with him. So Bill goes and gets drunk and fucks up a Taco Bell and gets arrested because of it. So yeah, if it's not intended to be a relationship, they're using the language of relationships to tell their story. And at some point, you gotta wonder, is there even a difference between those two things? So it's a real interesting book. It's a real, without getting into any more details, it's a real interesting book. The mystery has been very interesting. It's going to be cool to see people solve that eventually and, you know, figure out what that all means. But so far, I had a good time reading it. I'd recommend it. I have the Barnes & Noble exclusive one that has, like, extra pages. What are the extra pages? I have no idea. Man, are we getting a new Gravity Falls? You know, if this book is leading towards a new season of the show or something else, no idea. But it'd be cool. I mean, I'd be down for another season of Gravity Falls. I know some people are like, oh, the show ends on a perfect note. They don't need to come back. And yeah, no, that is right. But if they do like a 10-year time skip, or even like show grown-up Dipper and his kids, and like they go to Gravity Falls and all that, I think that would be equally interesting. You know, kind of like that, you know, that South Park bit where it's like, oh, it's 10 years later, you know, the post-COVID special. Kind of if they do something like that, I feel like that could be a lot of fun. You know, showing all the characters we love all grown up. But we'll just have to wait and see. Oh, shit. So yeah, Book of Bill, easy recommendation. Anything else? Random's game. No, I kind of feel like that's it. Oh, I've been... Okay, yes, there is one more thing, actually. So, if you haven't been hearing around, there's a new Fairly Odd Parents show. Fairly Odd Parents, A New Wish. And I had seen people talk about it, right? I remember when it was announced and everything, when the first episode was leaked or whatever. And it was like, okay, that's interesting. Right? It didn't look terrible. I also heard that Primo's show isn't terrible either. Like, I watched the first episode. It was fine. The fact that it references Dragon Ball Z in the first 10 seconds means that it's doing something right. Because there is nothing more Mexican than Dragon Ball Z. So, you know, I only watched the first episode. I have not watched the new Batman show. I haven't watched... I'm like 2 episodes behind on Kite Man. But I did check out the Fairly Odd Parents' New Wish. And yeah, it's okay. I like the new kid, Hazel, is fine. I'm surprised, you know, because in the original Fairly Odd Parents, Timmy gets fairies because he has an abusive babysitter and he has neglectful parents, right? Like, his parent, like, I think of those Reddit posts where it's like, my parents don't love me, they just tolerate me. That's the Fairly Odd Parents, right? Timmy's parents don't love him, they tolerate him. And Vicky's just an awful, abusive babysitter. The main character in this show, none of those problems. Yeah, her parents' biggest problem is they're workaholics, right? They love to work, they're really invested in their work, right? They love what they do, but they're not, like, neglectful or any, like Timmy's parents, right? They do love her, they do spend time with her, you know, sometimes, not as much as she'd like, but, right, she is admittedly a loner, but she doesn't have a mean babysitter or anything. Honestly, it's really weird that she gets fairies. Like, it definitely... You know, like, I know people in the original Fairly Odd Parents are like, oh, Chester should have gotten fairies. But that's the thing. Chester doesn't have fairies in the original show. Because, yeah, well, he lives in a trailer, and his dad is, you know, a disgraced former baseball player. His dad loves him. He may not live the best life, but he comes from a loving home with a dad who loves him, right? Yeah, sure, Vicky, babysitter, all that. But he doesn't have his... Right, Timmy is way more neglected than he is. Sure, Timmy is much wealthier than he is, but, right, he's way more neglected. Right, Hazel kind of feels like, hey, what if we gave Chester fairies? Right, like, it's not the... Like, yeah, she's richer, but she's not... Right, her problems aren't as big as, like, Timmy's were in the original show. You get some side characters. I want to say Jasmine is one, and the other one, I do not remember their name, but they are the most non-binary character in existence. I don't even know if they are non-binary, but they ooze gender. Like, what gender? Yes. Are you a boy or a girl? Yes. Right, they're a skateboarder. But, yeah, I do not remember their name at all. I just know they ooze non-binary. So that's interesting, right? They're fun. There's an ASMR kid who I don't like. He's not awful, but I don't like him. There's a rich kid, right? They kind of do Richie Bucks Aplenty or whatever his name was. Right? This rich kid who's Doug Dimmadone's grandson. Remember how there was, like, Doug and then his son Dale who worked in the lemonade mines? Yeah, Dale's back and he's a rich asshole like his dad. I love the joke that the biggest building in town is just Doug Dimmadone's hat. And it's like 3 times the size of every other building. That's a fun joke. I don't know if that's Timmy, but there's a Timmy-looking character in a lot of episodes who's just working odd jobs. You know, there is a part of me that really hopes that it's like, you know, that either this is old, retired Timmy, or, you know, we're like post... Because I want Channel Chasers to be canon. So, right, if this is like post-Channel Chasers, stuff like that, I'd be fine with that. But, you know, they haven't really gone... Outside of, like, referencing Timmy and whatnot, they haven't really got into that. The new art style is good. I think it looks fine. Like, I think of the Jimmy Timmy Power Hour and how ugly that looks. This looks good in comparison. This looks so much better in comparison. But they still call back to 2D animation all the time. Like, anytime anyone takes a picture, it looks like the classic 2D animation. All the episodes have title cards that use the classic 2D animation. It actually all looks pretty good. I was surprised, but no, I think the animation is good. Cosmo and Wanda are great in this. I love, so one, kind of like most TV couples, right? Cosmo and Wanda were originally the idiot and the nagging wife, but they love each other, right? That's a very classic TV trope. You know, The Simpsons, Family Guy, American Dad, technically Gumball. Bluey technically does it as well. Right, where it's the idiot husband and the nagging wife. But in early seasons of The Simpsons, early seasons of Family Guy, basically the entirety of Gumball, right? Even though they have those tropes, they love each other, right? The parents in Bluey love each other. But when these shows go on long enough, eventually they get flanderized, and the guy becomes too stupid to function. And the girl becomes so nagging that she just fucking hates her husband. It's like, why are you two even together? And Fairly Odd, right? The Simpsons did this. Family Guy did this. Right? They fall into that trap eventually. But, the Fairly Odd Parents did that as well. Cosmo became too stupid to function, and Wanda just outright hated him. Even though, early on in the show, they genuinely love each other. Like, Cosmo's constantly talking about how much he loves Wanda, right? There's an entire episode where you meet Mama Cosmo, who's trying to break them up, and instead the only thing Cosmo wants to do is go back to Wanda, because he loves her. And so this show, basically, right, Cosmo and Wanda are in retirement, because it's been they basically went and time traveled for 10,000 years, exploring the universe, and they basically rekindled their marriage after the original Fairly Odd Parents, right? Was their marriage... How much of the original Fairly Odd Parents is canon? Who fucking knows? Again, I say just cut it off after Channel Chasers. But no, they've rekindled their marriage, and yeah, I think it's great in this show that they just love each other. They talk about how much they love each other, and right, we kind of see them, right, they're trying to live... At the start of the show, they're trying to live a human life. That, right, they've done everything, so now they're disguising themselves as humans and just trying to, you know, enjoy their retirement. It's fun. It's fun, it's warm-hearted, but, you know, Hazel says, right, they like Hazel, and so when she wishes for something, they just get compelled to grant her wish, and that's like, oh, that's very sweet, right? Because they also do love their job. And that's, so, eventually I'm not fully caught up or anything. But I did get to the episode where you meet Perry. So, right, Poof is in this show. But he's not called Poof, he's instead called Perry. And, I heard, supposedly, and I don't know if this is true, this may be a complete fiction. But supposedly he's called Perry now, because I guess in some languages, you know, some countries, Poof is a slur. You know, it's kind of like Wollywog, right? In the original Pikmin games, they were called Wollywogs, but they eventually changed it to Wally Hop because wog is a slur. Or, you know, it's offensive. I think I've heard it's the same way with Poof. Is that true? I have no idea. But I could believe that. So that's why they changed his name to Perry. And yeah, he's all grown up, and he's got his first god kid, right? They make a joke about how he's gone into the family business. And of course he hasn't told his parents, because he hasn't actually seen his parents since their 10,000 year vacation. But no, I like that. I like the idea of Poof going into the family business, or Perry. I like Perry's design. I think he's got Cosmo's voice, and Cosmo's, like, eyes. But he's got Wanda's haircut, and Cosmo, you know how Cosmo wears, like, a white shirt and a tie? He wears a purple shirt with suspenders. I think it's a great design, and I like them using, like, hey, what if Poof grew up? We see his first god kid, who's Dev Dimmadome. You know, they're basically doing the, Richie Buxaplenty story again, but I think they're doing it better. Like, because, you know, Dev is kind of like, he starts off as a villain. He reminds me a lot of the kid from, Spy Family, where he starts off as like this asshole, but slowly you get to learn about him as a person. He actually does have a neglectful parent who does not like him. And yeah, him getting fairies makes sense. Eventually, of course, Hazel meets up with him. And, you know, they find out each other has fairies. They spend a whole episode in, like, Fairy World or whatever. And I think that was the last one I saw. But yeah, it's all around been a fairly solid show. Is it a kid's show? Definitely. But so is the original. So, like, what else are you gonna do? I think it's been a perfectly suitable show. If you've got a kid, right, if you grew up on the Fairly Odd Parents and you have a kid now, oh, I'm sure they would love this. I cannot believe we got 3 titles in a row. That's kind of crazy. Yeah, so yeah, I think that's all I've got to talk about. So I guess let's go to the outro. So what's coming up in the next few weeks? So we have the Splatfest next week. That's for sure. We have the Splatfest next week. Hopefully we'll have more news to talk about, because we literally only talked about the news for, like, about 10 minutes. Okay, a little closer to 15. But, yeah, no, we didn't have much this week. Maybe we'll have more next week. I don't know, I didn't want to talk about the death of Bungie. Oh, the writer's strike the actor's strike is still going on against the video game industry. I meant to bring that up earlier. Again, we'll mention it every week. I feel like a lot less people are talking about this strike than the previous one. But, like, yeah, sadly, that's how it goes. I kind of like that shirt, actually. Yeah, I like the gold. So yeah, the strike is still going on. That hasn't changed. Just a reminder. But yeah, next week we have the Splatfest. We're obviously repping Team Pasta. Like, bread is good, you know, love me some garlic bread. But pasta, man. Pasta just cannot be beat. Other than that, I don't have, right, we kind of did our one big stream of the year. Again, I'll get that uploaded eventually, the highlights of that uploaded eventually. I don't know when, but I'll get it done. Yeah, I don't really have any other big streams planned anytime soon. Like, we'll probably, because when Echoes of Wisdom comes out, I am not going to stream Echoes of Wisdom. I have no intention of it. I'm going to play that one offline. However, we're probably going to replay Link's Awakening. I'm going to replay Link's Awakening for like the 20th time. So that'll probably be coming up in the future. But that won't be until like late September, so who cares? Oh wait, we didn't go in here. Other than that, I have nothing planned for the stream. You know, we'll just keep going on within chat. Ooh. Sleep mask. It actually isn't a bad-looking sleep mask. I like that. Supposedly, sleep masks are great. I don't know. I've heard things about how, like, I guess even though people don't report feeling a difference, in actuality, like, there is a difference between wearing a sleep mask and they're actually good. I don't know. I've never used one. It'd be hard to find one that fits my giant head. But yeah, I have no plan. I know at some point also, late September, early October, I want to do Switch 2 predictions. We're going to spend an entire day doing Switch 2 predictions. I have a lot of them. Actually, not that many. But I want to... Oh, God, that mask. But we're going to do that, because I'm going to guess the Switch 2 is going to be revealed in October. So we're going to do that in either early October or late September. Just kind of feeling what the vibe's like. Hey, Bill. It's our boy Bill. And yeah, other than that, we'll figure it out. But I have, like, outside of that one Pikmin stream, I know I'm a bad streamer, that I should be doing more, yada yada yada. That's the way the news goes. Oh, and I failed to play Super Mario RPG. I know I wanted to do it in July. That just didn't happen. It's the way the news goes. I don't know, it was a weird stream tonight, man. I don't know, it was doing that ranking list was very impromptu. But, right, because I tried to read The Grandest Game and was really struggling to get through it. And was like, okay, I need something that uses a lot less attention span. And those kind of funny streams were perfect. So yeah, I had a good time with all that. But that's where we're ending off for today. I hope you all enjoyed. Stay tuned for more. Till next time, peace.